Racism in football. Racism in football remains an ongoing problem. Some people wish to confront and eradicate it, others simply want it ignored. Some commentators identify racism as one of the major problems facing football in the early 21st century. Football is a sport that has been plagued and blighted by racism for decades. Although racism in football operates largely in the same way as other forms of racism, the wider social meaning attributed to certain acts committed on the football field means that the average racist comment or gesture will not be tolerated anywhere near as much as it is in other aspects of society. Racism in football by players. Racism is the belief that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to the others. Racism can exist between races, religions, and ethnic groups. For many, racism and the use of racist language on our game fields has been tolerated. It is time for us to end this practice once and for all. Racism is unacceptable in all forms. Racism has long been a problem in football, the world's most popular sport. Racism exists in many football competitions and is widespread in international football. It occurs, either intentionally or unintentionally, at varied levels of the game, and it ranges from verbal abuse to physical attack. To combat racism problem in the game, FIFA has introduced campaigns such as Kick It Out and Show Racism the Red Card. These campaigns have led several high-profile players to become spokespeople for the cause. Some players who have been victims of racial abuse have responded on the field with immediate action by leaving the pitch until action is taken. Racism by football management. The FA is not doing enough to tackle racism in English football and still treats it as a low-level issue, according to the Professional Footballers Association. There were 98 reported incidents of discrimination by supporters during the 2018-19 season, up from 88 in 2017-18, according to a report by anti-discrimination group Kick It Out. PFA Chairman Gordon Taylor says football can do so much more to address these incidents. We should be setting an example of how to behave. Instead, as this report shows, a minority of people are bringing shame on the game, he said. Football management. Racism in football is a sensitive topic, and something we take very seriously. We have strict guidelines in place to deal with any issues of discrimination, and have robustly taken action against players, managers or fans wherever incidents are reported. Football management needs to educate themselves more about it. There are too many examples of racism being handled badly by the people running the game. It is the job of those in power to lead us towards a better world. The rest of you should do what we can to help them get there. Racism by football fans. Racism in football is the abuse of players, officials, and fans by the participants of the opposing side. These actions include racial slurs and actions. In the most recent occurrence during a match between English team Liverpool and Spanish team Villarreal, a banana was thrown onto the pitch when Liverpool's Mario Balotelli was preparing to take a penalty kick. Racism is a form of fan violence that can make attending a football match an intimidating experience. While many clubs have put in place effective measures, racism remains a blight on football. If we don't tackle racism, it will hold back both football and society overall. Racism in football. Racism in football in America. Racism in American sports is the belief that an athlete's skills are related to their race. Racial discrimination in sports can take many forms, and its impact on society has played a significant role in the history of racism in the United States. Racial discrimination has been an issue in sports since sport was first created. Racism in American football is the widespread racial discrimination faced by players and officials during the time of American football. The sport was established in 1879, and it was not until 1946 that the first black player, Kenny Washington, made his way onto an NFL team. Racism can be detected largely through players that were denied access to major establishment because of their skin color. Racism in football in France. Racism in football in France is officially defined by the Fédération Française de Football, FFF, as all forms of discrimination and violence, verbal or physical, that are founded on racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, as well as discrimination against French citizens because of their gender or sexual orientation. Although racism in football remains a major problem in France, the F president, Noël Le Graët, appeared on Saturday to minimize the issue, suggesting that it's not an important matter. After Marseille striker Mario Balotelli suffered racist abuse from spectators during a match against Dijon, France Football Federation President Noël Le Graët has called on referees to stop matches if players are racially abused. Legrayat said that if there is a problem with racism, we will immediately stop the game and leave the pitch. We won't put up with it. Racism in football in Germany. It is said that racism has no place in football. Yet during the 2018 World Cup, a right-wing German fan group was observed giving Heil Hitler salutes and singing Nazi slogans. Football has the power to inspire and bring people together, but it also creates a platform for those from the far right to appeal to wider audiences. Racism in German football has been a topic of discussion for many years. The German Football Federation is in line with the 2006 statutes of FIFA and UEFA, which stipulate that every person should have the right to enjoy football, free from discrimination and prejudice, Article 3 Discrimination Par. 1-3. However, there have been many incidents involving racism in football before and afterwards. Racism in football in Europe. Racism in European football is the issue of racism in association football across Europe. Racism in football has been a significant problem, particularly since the 1980s, with players facing racist incidents in stadiums or on social media and have been punished by fines and players being banned from playing matches. Racism is a complex issue within football. Racism has resulted in the expulsion of teams and individuals from tournaments, as well as other sanctions, such as forfeiting a game, a fine, points deduction, or even suspension from future competitions. Such punishments are usually imposed by FIFA, UEFA, or the competition's organization. Up to this day, Europe has the highest amount of racist fans. Traveling to a foreign stadium, we often face racist words and behavior. Discrimination should have no place in football. For you and me, for everyone who loves football. Add your support to our fight against discrimination. Racism in football in Asia. Racism in football, soccer, is the abuse of players, officials, and fans because of their skin color, nationality, or ethnicity. It occurs in many parts of the world, but varying exposure and media coverage makes some incidents more well known than others. In most cases, only small sections of fans participate in racist activities. Football is one of the most popular sports in Asia. Most of the countries have their own football association. There are some serious problems in Asian football, such as racism and fair play, or gambling, etc. Racism in football in Asia is in soccer-related racism, which occurs in different levels of soccer in East Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries including China, South Korea, Japan, Myanmar, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Racist incident in football. Argentina's Lionel Messi called for stronger punishments for racist incidents in football, telling the BBC that some fans should get in stadium ban or pay a fine. The incident happened in the final of a tournament between Chile and Argentina. The match was at the San Carlos de Apoquindo Stadium in Santiago and counted for the Sud-American U15 Championships. The referee, who was working as a volunteer, noticed a black boy in the stands and asked him to leave because children were not allowed. Thankfully, there were adults nearby who witnessed the incident and explained what had happened, emphasizing that it was an act of racism by the referee. A top football official from Afghanistan is calling for Qatar to be stripped of hosting the 2022 World Cup, because of racist policies which discriminate against the country's Asian workers. How to reduce racism in football. Football is a game that millions of people around the world enjoy. It is important, however, that everyone understands how to help prevent racism in football. Players, coaches, and referees all have a responsibility to ensure this culture continues. Racism is a problem in football, but it can be fixed by people that are volunteering to tackle the issue. We need better education, more leaders and players setting examples of good behavior, and we also need fans holding other fans accountable. You can help to reduce racism in football by joining the Kick It Out campaign and supporting the efforts of others. Racism has been a persistent part of football. While few people openly engage in racist sentiment, microaggressions such as exclusion, stereotyping, and telling racial jokes, as well as acceptable forms of singling out players or using slurs, can all contribute to an environment where racism is tolerated.